Let's face it, stupidity isn't just about IQ or academics. It's about behaviors and mindsets that lead to poor decisions, toxic relationships, and wasted potential. You could be surrounded by people acting foolishly without even knowing it. Worse, you could unknowingly be the one making these mistakes. But don't worry, by the end of this video, you'll not only recognize the signs of a stupid person, but also understand how to avoid falling into these traps yourself. Stick around, because sign number 6 is something even highly intelligent people fall victim to, and it could be sabotaging your progress without you realizing it. Sign 1. They always have an opinion, but never a fact. You know this person, the one who seems to have an opinion on everything: politics, success, relationships, or even topics they clearly know nothing about. They talk with such conviction that it almost feels like they must know what they're talking about. But when you press them for details, ask for evidence, or simply inquire, "Why do you believe that?" they crumble under the weight of their own ignorance. This isn't just annoying, it's dangerous. Stoic philosophers like Epictetus emphasized that wisdom begins with acknowledging your ignorance. The wise seek clarity and understanding. The foolish, on the other hand, cling to opinions as a shield for their fragile egos, terrified of admitting they don't know something. I once worked alongside someone who seemed to have a hot take on everything, from the stock market to ancient history. One day, during a team meeting, he confidently asserted that a specific stock would inevitably soar due to a market trend. When asked why, he faltered. His response? "I read it somewhere." That somewhere turned out to be a questionable blog with no credibility. The meeting ended, but the lesson stuck with me. Stupidity flourishes when people stop questioning their beliefs. A fool loves to provide answers but rarely asks questions. They'll argue passionately, but their foundation is fragile because it's built on unverified opinions, assumptions, and hearsay. They fear looking uninformed, so they cover their lack of knowledge with bluster. Here's what this kind of mindset does. It locks you into a pattern of stagnation. If you never admit you're wrong or that you don't know something, how can you ever grow? The irony is that admitting ignorance is not a sign of weakness, but a stepping stone to wisdom. Imagine this. You're at a social gathering, and someone asks you about a recent world event you know little about. A wise person would say, "I haven't read much about that yet, but I'd love to hear your perspective." But a fool? They'll rattle off surface-level knowledge to appear informed. In their quest to save face, they miss an opportunity to learn something valuable. The real danger? When you always act as though you have the answers, people eventually stop correcting you. They start seeing you as someone who can't be reasoned with, and over time you lose credibility. The people around you won't trust your judgment because they know you prioritize looking smart over being right. How to avoid this trap? Start practicing intellectual humility. The next time you feel compelled to give an opinion, pause and ask yourself, "Do I really know enough to speak on this?" If the answer is no, be honest about it. Say, "I don't know, but I'm interested in learning more." This simple shift will transform how others perceive you. There is a quiet strength in admitting ignorance. It shows confidence, self-awareness, and a genuine desire to grow, qualities that earn far more respect than pretending to know everything. Don't let pride block your path to wisdom. Instead, embrace curiosity. When you adopt this mindset, you'll be surprised how much you can learn and how many people are willing to teach you. Remember, the fool pretends to know, the wise seek to learn. Sign 2. They refuse to change their minds. One of the most dangerous signs of foolishness is an unshakable attachment to outdated or incorrect beliefs. A fool doesn't just believe they're right, they need to be right, even when faced with overwhelming evidence to the contrary. The Stoics would see this as a fatal flaw. As Marcus Aurelius famously said, "If someone can prove me wrong and show me my mistake, I will gladly change. For it is the truth I seek, and the truth never harmed anyone." But fools don't seek truth, they seek validation. Think about the last argument you had with someone who refused to see reason. It wasn't about logic, it was about ego. A foolish person feels attacked when they're proven wrong because, to them, admitting fault is like admitting weakness. But here's the irony. The inability to change your mind isn't a sign of strength. It's a sign of fear. Fear of looking vulnerable, fear of feeling inadequate, and fear of growth itself. Let me share a story. I had a family friend who was obsessed with a particular diet trend. He believed eating only one meal a day would unlock longevity and vitality. When he began experiencing fatigue, dizziness, and severe nutrient deficiencies, people in his life tried to help him understand the risks of his eating habits. But instead of listening, he doubled down, dismissing advice with statements like, "I know what works for me." His health worsened, but his pride prevented him from making a change. This behavior isn't just stubborn, it's self-destructive. The fool's resistance to change creates a cycle of stagnation. When you refuse to acknowledge that your current path isn't working, you block opportunities for learning and progress. Growth demands flexibility, and stubbornness ensures stagnation. Now contrast that with a wise person. When confronted with new information, they ask themselves, "Is this better than what I currently believe?" If it is, they adapt. If not, they examine the information further. Their ego isn't tied to being right, it's tied to learning and evolving. The Stoics often warned about the dangers of clinging to rigid beliefs. To them, a flexible mind was a strong mind. Epictetus taught his students to be like a river, constantly flowing and adapting to new terrain, rather than a stagnant pond that breeds decay. The real danger of stubbornness, it isolates you. When people see that you're unwilling to consider other perspectives, they stop sharing them with you. They may smile and nod to avoid confrontation, but internally they distance themselves. Over time, you lose the valuable insights and feedback that could have helped you grow. How to fix this? Cultivate a mindset of adaptability. Start by identifying the beliefs you're most attached to and asking, "When was the last time I questioned this?" If the answer is never, it's time to dig deeper. Seek out opposing viewpoints not to argue, but to understand. I once met a successful entrepreneur who shared an interesting practice. Every year, he wrote down his 5 most important beliefs about life, business, and relationships. Then, he spent time reading books and articles that challenged those beliefs. His goal wasn't to abandon them, but to test their strength. If they held up to scrutiny, he kept them. If they didn't, he adapted. A small exercise to get you started. Pick one belief you hold strongly, whether it's about money, relationships, or personal habits. Then, actively seek out information that contradicts it. Not to argue with it, but to understand the logic behind it. Ask yourself, could this perspective have merit? Even if you don't change your mind, the act of considering other views will make you more open-minded. The takeaway is simple. Don't let pride trap you in ignorance. The world is constantly changing, and the most successful people are those who can evolve with it. Remember, it's not about proving others wrong. It's about finding what's right. The moment you become more interested in truth than validation, you unlock the kind of wisdom that leads to real growth. Sign 3. They blame others for their problems. Here's a brutal truth. The fastest way to spot a fool is to watch how they react to failure. A wise person takes responsibility, learns from mistakes, and makes adjustments. A foolish person looks for someone to blame, deflecting responsibility and ensuring they remain stuck in the same patterns. Stoicism teaches us that while we can't control external events, we can control how we respond to them. When you blame others, you give away that control. You hand over the power to change your situation and label yourself a victim, effectively giving up on personal growth. Instead of looking for solutions, the fool remains trapped in the comfort of excuses. Let me tell you about a former coworker of mine who got fired. Instead of reflecting on his poor performance, missed deadlines, and bad attitude, he blamed everyone else, his manager for being unfair, his coworkers for not supporting him, and even the company for having unrealistic expectations. His list of excuses was endless. But here's the truth. The moment he got fired, his destiny was in his hands. Blaming others didn't save his job, fix his reputation, or improve his future prospects. This behavior isn't just common, it's destructive. The person who blames others convinces themselves that external forces are responsible for their failures, which prevents them from identifying their role in the problem. Without that insight, there's no room for improvement. The deeper problem, blaming others, creates a cycle of dependency. When you believe that someone else is responsible for your setbacks, you also believe that someone else must fix them. This mindset leads to stagnation and frustration, as you're constantly waiting for external conditions to change instead of taking action. Let's contrast this with a wise approach. A person who embraces accountability asks questions like, "What could I have done differently? How can I improve next time?" They understand that failure is an opportunity to learn, not an invitation to point fingers. By focusing on what they can control, they empower themselves to create change. I once knew someone who faced a major career setback. They lost a high-paying job due to company downsizing. Instead of wallowing in self-pity or blaming the company, they took a step back and evaluated their skills and gaps. They realized they had become complacent in their role and hadn't updated their skill set in years. Instead of blaming the company, they took a coding course, revamped their resume, and within 6 months landed a better job. Why blaming others feels easy? It's a psychological defense mechanism. By shifting the blame, you protect your ego from the pain of admitting mistakes. But this protection is short-lived and comes at a high cost, the cost of growth. How to break this pattern? Embrace radical accountability. Start small. The next time something goes wrong, pause and ask, "What role did I play in this?" It could be as simple as acknowledging that you didn't prepare adequately for a meeting, or as significant as admitting you chose the wrong approach in a major project. Practicing this doesn't mean beating yourself up or carrying the burden of guilt. It means seeing mistakes as opportunities to learn and improve. For example, if you miss a deadline, instead of saying, "My coworker didn't give me the information on time," say, "I should have followed up sooner to ensure I had what I needed." By doing this, you shift from a reactive mindset to a proactive one. Action step: create a personal accountability journal. At the end of each day, reflect on any setbacks you experienced and write down your role in them. Identify one lesson from each setback and how you can apply it moving forward. The Stoic perspective. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." When you accept that your reactions, decisions, and actions determine your outcomes, you take back the power that blaming others steals from you. The truth is, blaming others keeps you comfortable but powerless. Taking responsibility may be uncomfortable, but it's where growth begins. You can either protect your ego or protect your future. The choice is yours. Remember, the path to wisdom is paved with accountability. Sign 4. They talk more than they listen. There's an old saying, "A fool speaks because they want to say something, but the wise speak because they have something to say." You've met them, the people who dominate conversations, interrupt others, and never truly listen. They nod, waiting for their turn to speak, but they aren't actually absorbing what the other person is saying. This behavior screams insecurity because the constant need to speak is often a defense mechanism to hide a lack of confidence and self-awareness. Here's what makes this dangerous. When you're always talking, you're missing opportunities to learn. Stoic philosophy places a strong emphasis on the power of silence and observation. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Learn to be silent and you will see the truth." The ability to stay quiet and truly listen allows you to understand others on a deeper level, pick up on valuable insights, and avoid unnecessary conflicts. I remember attending a networking event where a man monopolized every conversation. He bragged about his achievements, dropped names of important people he claimed to know, and gave unsolicited advice to anyone within earshot. His energy was overwhelming and frankly exhausting. By the end of the night, people were visibly avoiding him. Meanwhile, a quiet individual I had noticed earlier was having meaningful one-on-one conversations. That person left the event with several new connections and future opportunities. Why do some people talk too much? Often, it's rooted in a need for validation. They feel that if they don't constantly assert themselves, they will be forgotten or deemed unimportant. This fear leads them to overcompensate by dominating discussions. However, what they don't realize is that the most respected and impactful individuals are often those who listen attentively and speak sparingly, but meaningfully. The Stoic approach, the wise understand that listening is not a passive act, it's an active skill. When you listen, you're gathering information, understanding different perspectives, and fostering trust. Silence isn't empty, it's a space where growth occurs. Pro tip: practice active listening by focusing on the speaker's words without planning your response while they talk. When someone finishes speaking, take a moment to process their message before replying. This pause not only demonstrates respect, but also allows you to respond thoughtfully. How to develop better listening skills. Ask follow-up questions. Instead of steering the conversation back to yourself, dig deeper into what the other person is saying. For example, if someone shares a story about a recent project, ask them what challenges they faced or what they learned from the experience. Maintain eye contact. This shows the speaker that you are fully engaged and present. It also helps you stay focused and prevents your mind from wandering. Resist the urge to interrupt. Even if you feel excited to share your thoughts, wait until the other person has finished speaking. Interrupting sends the message that you value your input more than theirs. Reflect on what you heard. Summarize or paraphrase key points to show that you understand and appreciate the speaker's perspective. For example, you might say, "It sounds like the biggest challenge for you was balancing multiple deadlines. Is that right?" The benefits of listening. People are naturally drawn to those who make them feel heard and understood. By becoming a better listener, you enhance your relationships, gain valuable knowledge, and build a reputation as someone who is wise and thoughtful. Over time, this leads to stronger connections and greater opportunities. A friend of mine who excels at this once told me, "Listening isn't about staying silent. It's about creating space for others to share what matters to them." He's the person everyone turns to for advice, not because he always knows the answers, but because he listens long enough to truly understand the problem. Final thought. If you find yourself talking more than listening, ask yourself why. Are you seeking attention, validation, or approval? Once you identify the root cause, you can start shifting your focus toward meaningful conversations where both sides benefit. Remember, in Stoicism, wisdom isn't about speaking often. It's about speaking when it matters. Practice the art of listening, and you'll gain more than you ever will from dominating conversations. Sign 5, they seek validation instead of growth. Social media has made this behavior more obvious than ever. People post their successes, humble brags, and perfectly curated photos just to hear the sound of applause in the form of likes and comments. But here's the problem. Validation is temporary. Growth is permanent. A foolish person chases validation because it's easier than putting in the work to improve. They crave external praise because they don't have internal confidence. And when the praise stops, so does their sense of self-worth. This dependence on external validation creates a fragile self-image. When you rely on others to define your value, you surrender control of your happiness. The Stoics warned about this centuries ago. Epictetus taught that external praise is fleeting and unreliable, while true contentment comes from inner discipline and self-respect. Let me give you an example. I had a friend who constantly sought validation through Instagram. If her post didn't get enough likes, she'd delete it and post something else. Her mood fluctuated based on how many compliments or reactions she received online. She measured her worth by what others thought, not by what she achieved internally. Meanwhile, she neglected her personal growth. Her goals, dreams, and mental health all suffered. Eventually, she realized that no amount of likes could fill the emptiness created by ignoring her inner development. The trap of seeking validation. It's like chasing a mirage. The more you chase external approval, the further you drift from your authentic self. You start living for others, molding your actions, words, and decisions to please them. But validation is like a drug. It provides a temporary high but leaves you feeling empty once it fades. Why growth matters more. Growth is permanent because it transforms who you are at the core. When you work on yourself, whether it's developing a new skill, overcoming a challenge, or improving your mindset, the results stay with you. Growth isn't dependent on the applause of others. It's driven by your own dedication and progress. How to shift from validation-seeking to growth-seeking. Embrace discomfort. Growth often requires you to step outside your comfort zone, face criticism, and make mistakes. Understand that failure is part of the process, and the absence of immediate praise doesn't mean you're failing. Seek feedback, not applause. Instead of asking people what they think of your success, ask how you can improve. Constructive feedback helps you grow, while empty compliments keep you stagnant. Measure progress internally. Set personal benchmarks and track your growth. Did you learn something new? Did you overcome a fear or break a bad habit? Celebrate these milestones internally, not through public validation. A powerful reminder from Stoicism. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The approval of others is a fickle thing. Be content with your own judgment of yourself." In essence, true respect comes when you live by your values, not when you conform to others' expectations. I know someone who once relied heavily on praise at work. Every time they completed a project, they craved recognition from their boss and peers. But when the praise wasn't forthcoming, their motivation tanked. It wasn't until they shifted their mindset and began setting personal goals, unrelated to external acknowledgement, that they found lasting fulfillment. They realized that completing a project to the best of their ability was rewarding enough, whether anyone noticed or not. Pro tip: journal your daily wins. Each day, write down one thing you did well and how it contributed to your growth. This practice shifts your focus from external approval to internal validation. The Stoics understood that external validation is like the wind. It comes and goes, and you can't control it. But what you can control is how you view yourself. When you stop seeking validation from others, you free yourself from the exhausting cycle of approval and rejection. Instead, you build lasting confidence based on personal growth, discipline, and resilience. Final takeaway: stop measuring your success by how many people applaud you. Measure it by how much you've improved compared to yesterday. Growth is permanent, and it will stay with you long after the applause fades. Sign 6. They fear discomfort and avoid challenges. This might be the most dangerous sign of all because it's the silent killer of ambition. A foolish person clings to comfort like a security blanket, avoiding anything that might challenge or inconvenience them. But the truth is, by prioritizing comfort over growth, they ensure mediocrity. Stoicism teaches us that discomfort is the price of growth. When you avoid challenges, you miss the very experiences that foster resilience, strength, and wisdom. As Marcus Aurelius said, the obstacle is the way. That means the things we avoid because they seem difficult or unpleasant often hold the key to our personal evolution. Let me share a story. I knew someone who had all the potential in the world, but never achieved anything meaningful because they always took the easy path. They turned down promotions because they didn't want the extra responsibility. They avoided difficult conversations to maintain short-term peace. They stayed in toxic relationships because leaving would be too hard. What they didn't realize was that each of these choices was slowly eroding their potential. The fear of discomfort wasn't just holding them back, it was crippling their ability to grow. The longer they stayed in their comfort zone, the more stagnant their life became. Even when opportunities presented themselves, they dismissed them, convincing themselves that staying where they were was the safer option. Why is discomfort so important? Growth is uncomfortable by design. When you challenge yourself, you force your mind and body to adapt to new conditions. That adaptation is where transformation happens. Just like muscles grow through resistance, your character develops when you face challenges head-on. Without discomfort, you stay the same, or worse, you regress. Here's the hidden danger. The more you avoid discomfort, the more fearful you become. Small challenges that you could have easily overcome start to feel overwhelming. This creates a feedback loop of avoidance, making it harder to tackle even the simplest obstacles. The Stoic perspective. Stoics embrace challenges as opportunities to strengthen their will and resilience. Epictetus advised his students to welcome difficulties because they reveal what you are truly capable of. Avoiding hardship, on the other hand, denies you the chance to discover your strength. How to break free from the comfort trap. Start by reframing discomfort as a sign of progress, not punishment. When you feel uneasy about doing something, it's usually a sign that you're about to grow. Embrace that feeling and lean into it. Actionable steps. Commit to a discomfort challenge. Each week, do one thing that scares you, whether it's speaking up in a meeting, learning a new skill, or confronting a difficult conversation. Start small but stay consistent. You don't need to conquer Everest on your first attempt. Start by doing something mildly uncomfortable, like saying no to someone or asking for help when you need it. Reflect on your growth. At the end of the week, write down how the uncomfortable experience helped you grow. What did you learn about yourself? What fears did you overcome? Real-life example. I once worked with someone who feared public speaking. They would avoid giving presentations at all costs, even when it meant missing out on important opportunities. But when they finally committed to stepping outside their comfort zone, they started small. First presenting to a small group, then a larger audience. Each time they gained confidence. Within a year, they were leading key meetings and being recognized for their leadership skills. Here's the ultimate truth. Growth doesn't happen in your comfort zone. The people who achieve greatness are the ones willing to be uncomfortable. They don't see obstacles as setbacks. They see them as the path forward. Final thought. The obstacle is the way. If something scares you or feels difficult, that's exactly where you should go. Don't let the fear of discomfort rob you of the future you deserve. The next time you feel tempted to avoid a challenge, remember, the discomfort you feel now is temporary, but the growth it brings will last a lifetime. The Stoics believe that wisdom is not about knowing everything, but about living with awareness, humility, and discipline. By identifying these 6 signs, you can avoid the pitfalls of foolishness and cultivate a life rooted in wisdom. Now, it's your turn. Which of these signs hit close to home? Don't be afraid to confront them. That's where real growth begins. Drop a comment below and let me know how you plan to overcome any of these habits. And remember, intelligence is not a fixed trait. It's a choice you make every day through your actions, your mindset, and your willingness to learn. Subscribe to the channel for more Stoic wisdom, and I'll see you in the next video.